Welcome to Real Chat with Kat, the podcast that's all about real conversations for real transformation. I'm your host, Kat Pulcinelli, professional speaker, MC, and best-selling international author. Here, we tackle the tough stuff, the mud that we all have found ourselves in. We talk about the pivots, the challenges, and the victories that shape our lives and our businesses. From overcoming trauma and finding your voice to navigating life's unexpected twists, we get raw, honest, and open. You'll hear from inspiring guests who share their stories of resilience, healing, and growth. Whether it's breaking through emotional abuse, embracing self-worth, or thriving in entrepreneurship, you'll find connection, empowerment, and the tools to keep you moving forward. So grab your favorite drink, settle in, and get ready for stories that hit home and conversations that make a difference. Let's get real together. Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining me today on this episode of Real Chat with Kat. I am so excited to have you here with me today, and I have such an awesome guest. I am so excited for this conversation. I've been waiting for it for the past several weeks. Andrew had no clue, but it's okay. So I am super excited to introduce Andrew to the podcast. Andrew, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thanks so much for having me on, Kat. I am also super excited about this conversation. It's going to be a good one.
Oh, it's going to be such a good one. All right, you guys, I know that I have phenomenal guests back to back to back, but there are just some that really, really connect and touch my heart and the way that I really feel like they're going to impact you as an audience as well. So I'm super excited to dive in. And speaking of diving in, then Andrew, please do us all a favor and tell us who you are, what it is that you do, and what got you into that space.
Well, accidents, as we all get to anywhere that's really purposeful in life. But my name's Andrew, Andrew Dewar. I'm from 5 Year U. We help people discover their true life purpose, and we coach people to create a life of meaning and purpose rather than living life by accident. And I run this with my partner, Kat, and we offer coaching to everyone who is kind of at that point in their life where they feel empty and they're just not knowing what to do. The stuff's not making them feel any better. And I got into this because I went through this. I checked all the boxes in life. I had a picture perfect life on the outside, and on the inside, I was rotting. And that was really hard in the moment. But when I faced it and was brave enough to take those steps forward that needed to be taken, my life transformed. And that's what got me into this whole space. I've always been into personal growth and whatnot, but this was quite a different, this was like growth time multiplied, shall we say.
Growth times 10.
Yeah, exactly.
And I love that you said that you had the picture perfect on the outside, but you were rotting in the inside. I have never heard that before, and it makes so much sense for me, at least for all the things that I've gone through and I talk about as well. I really not only heard the words, but I felt that on a personal level of just feeling like you completely are melting from what you thought you were, who you were supposed to be, or what standards you were supposed to live up to, or all those outsider expectations that we tend to put around us to begin with.
Yeah. Yeah, and that was exactly it. I grew up, I think all of us have trauma in our lives. My trauma led me to be very safe. I grew up with a very severe autistic sister. She out of nowhere when I was 12 years old, she tried to kill me. And then she kept trying to do that for a couple of years, and in a time where autism wasn't really well known like it is today. And this completely changes who you are in these moments in childhood, whether it's, something at school, friends, family. We all have those really hard moments. Nobody's trauma is better than anybody else's, and nobody's is less than anyone else's. We all just have our experience. And it was only I put that in my emotional garage. I'm like, I'm going to put that on the shelf. I'm just never going to deal with it. I'm fine. It's in the past. And then I built a whole life around trying to feel safe. So I played everybody else's game. I played the game of life. I got the good job. I was an accountant. I got the the nice wife, the kids, the house. I paid off my mortgage because that was the safe thing. And when all these things were done, I was just sitting there going like, I should feel good through this. And I didn't. And like so many people I would talk to, they would also feel this way, but nobody wanted to talk about it. So I had to find my own path. And as I did that, I started to discover that, there's all these parts of me that I need to really face and own and discover. And as I did that, I realized that, I'm living for everyone else here. And I don't know myself because I've never really asked what I want. I was living for everybody because I thought if everybody else was around me was happy, then I would be safe and I would be happy too. It's kind of like, I thought it was like a cold. If everybody else caught happiness, maybe I would catch happiness and then that would be it. It doesn't work like that, at least not for me. But that's been my experience is that, you got to take care, you got to put your mask on first. I remember having that conversation in an EMDR session where they told me that and I thought, I'm like, no, I'm going to save my kids. I would do all these things. And it's only when you really discover those kind of moments where you're like when you have somebody else point it out and you don't see how skewed your thinking is because it's just normal to you,
Hmm.
that you can start to kind of go, maybe there is just a little bit of a shift that needs to happen. And one day at a time you make these little changes to your life and wow, it just really changes for you over when you look back over a couple of years. I think you and I were talking earlier this week and I said, like, like when you look back on like 3 years ago, Andrew would not believe anything that Andrew today has gone through, experienced, improved. But that's kind of the excitement part of it is like when you open yourself up to being yourself, the road, it's like the trees part and you're like, oh, there's a path here. Cool. I'm just going to follow it and see where it goes.
Yeah. And I feel like even when we're in those moments, and I love that you said that everyone has trauma and none of our traumas are, bigger or less than anybody else's. And
Right.
I want to repeat that to everyone that is listening because even I have been corrected on that. When I started sharing my story, I actually had a conversation with the women at the Domestic Violence Center who wanted me to be a speaker. And I was talking with them about some of the things that I wanted to chat about and how I wanted to share things with other people. And I wanted to, approach police officers and let them ask the questions that nobody wants to be asked, right? Just so that people could learn. And one of the things that I happened to say was, I understand that I haven't been through what some women have been through. Like I know there's women that have been through a lot worse. And they're like, but that doesn't deplete what it is that you went through, which was really interesting because I didn't think of it that way. It's something that the brain kind of I feel like automatically plays on us because it's either something is right or wrong or something is better or it's worse. We have as a society a really hard time, and we're not taught this, that there is a space of neutrality where we're all kind of on the same level. There's so
Right.
much competition and there's so much guidelines that we're supposed to follow that it's like it's so automatic we don't even realize that we're doing it. So I just wanted to bring that point out to people that like even if your trauma was when you weren't a child, even if it was in your young adulthood, right? Mine was a lot of my trauma came from the age of 18 to 28. That doesn't mean that that's any different than someone that went through childhood trauma. Now, did it affect them differently? Yes. Does it affect how they may grow up or how they may shove things down? Yes. But we do have to find worth in our own situations. And so I just think that's really important to bring up because I do feel like there is always a competition when it comes to things in the way that we discuss stuff.
I agree. I think in those particular moments when we're having those thoughts about like my trauma isn't as bad as person A, B, C, D through Z. Sorry, you guys say Z. Nice. Canadian came up
I
through there.
got
My
it. So
bad. My bad. But when we look at our things, 'cause I was doing that too. It's like, well, it's not, I didn't grow up in a war-torn country. This didn't happen to me. This didn't happen. That is like your ego's way of protecting you and going like, you don't have to worry about it. Like it's a protection mechanism where you're like, I don't have to worry about it. It's not that bad. And what it's actually doing is diminishing your own worthiness within yourself, which is a big thing for everyone. Everybody I've worked with, we all have worthiness issues. It's universal. And when we can look at those things and go, you know what? Yeah, I I wasn't, you know, I wasn't abused as badly as somebody else was, and my situation isn't the same as this other person's, but it's mine. You're having your life, and you're trying to not get into that problem to feel it, and that's okay. It's just kind of knowing that, you probably need somebody to say your trauma was valid and it's yours, and it's what you went through, and God, it's hard, and that's okay. Don't diminish it because somebody else had a different experience, because that's just hurting you. That's just delaying what you're trying to go through
Hmm. I
and
love that
heal.
so much. And you're so right. Like, oh, there's so many layers and levels into this one. But I go down a rabbit hole. But one of the things that I find really interesting is the way that we process things, regardless of age, and then the decisions that we make out of it. And what I have seen consistently with a lot of my guests, and myself included, is we go through these experiences, we believe that it's not that big of a deal, or we're already through it, so we don't need to deal with it anymore. And so we just push it down in this box. And then what I have really noticed, and I'd love to know if you felt this way too, is it's almost like logic overtakes everything else. Like we start to kind of shove out the rest of the emotions. We start to kind of push out having to deal with certain things or wanting to deal with them, almost like, yes, a protection mechanism, but it's kind of like a way to disconnect as well.
Mhm.
And I feel like then that's when we go into like the safe job and the safe family. Like we start to look for ways to follow a protocol, because a protocol means we don't have to figure out the unknown. When what's really interesting is once we make the decision that protocol doesn't work for us anymore, that's when we tend to step into the forest and start looking for the path that is not necessarily carved out in front of us, which is really, really interesting. And I think that when you decide to step into the forest, that's when like the whole world really starts to open up. And then that's when you have to really not relive, but decide if you were going to handle the things that you thought you were done with, and finding a way to, like you said earlier, healing from them and learning from them so that they don't necessarily have you chained up anymore. You can
Yeah.
actually leave them in the forest. You can bury them somewhere. You can let them go back into the earth, and you can continue to move forward so that you can continue finding the light.
Yeah, let's use that forest metaphor. Let's go really deep on this one because it's fun.
Okay,
So,
I'm game.
let's pretend like the trauma is that really old tree that's rotting. And it's, for whatever reason, it's holding on because there's something we need to learn from it, whether it's acceptance, forgiveness, self-love, worthiness, power, enoughness, whatever that is for us. There's a lot of things that happen. Our subconscious is holding on to it because it's like maybe there's something we've missed here, and maybe it's to just embrace your story. Everybody's journey is different. I'm not going to speculate. So once we can kind of go to that old tree and go and just kind of push it over and go, I got it, I understand this message, then it becomes, it composts, it decays, it disappears into the collective forest, and it becomes a fertile ground for new, better experiences to grow. But nothing can grow in that spot until we take out the tree by the roots and let it do what nature had always intended it to do, was to serve its purpose and then become a breeding ground for something better. Is that good? I'm trying to
I
think if that was a good
think
metaphor or
that is
not.
like the coolest metaphor ever. So like I just
Wow, I
pretty sure I
overshot.
just I'm pretty sure I just like played the whole scenario in my brain. I'm a very visual person anyway. So, but like that makes so much sense because if you think about what people talk about as well as they're growing, is they had to let a form of them die in order to be able to rebirth anew, right? We talk about
Yeah,
the caterpillar that turns into the butterfly. We talk about the phoenix rising from the ashes. Like we talk about these metaphors around rebirthing and kind of starting anew. And I've never
yeah.
thought about that in regards to the trees. I mean, because they're doing the same thing. I'm so stealing that from you, just so you know. So let's
Thanks. I make coffee once in a while as a thank you. We're good. No, I'm just kidding. Something came up when we were saying this that I feel called to say, and I've said it before once in a while to friends, but I don't know if I've ever said it on a show or anything like that.
okay.
But some of the things that we go through when you go through something, at a young age, you make up the rule with the mind from that age. So if if you go to school on the first day and you're a tiny kid and somebody beats you up and takes your lunch money, which, because you're living in an 80s movie, and there's but you can make like a variety of stories out of that. You can make it like, bigger people are mean, tall people suck, school's evil, whatever else. But the story that you're making at that time is a 5-year-old mind's story. And you can take that little lesson because you might not question it, like you kind of just take that seed, you plant it, and this weed starts growing out, and you never question it because, for some reason with our egos and stuff, we often don't think we're wrong until we start seeing all the things we're wrong with, and then that's another thing. We'll leave that. But when you can come back on these experiences with the right person or on your own if you feel guided to, and start going like, what was that lesson? Okay, so the kid pushed me down. And yeah, as a 5-year-old, I'm looking at that, and yeah, I cried, I got hurt, I got a bruise, all these pains come up, and I made these stories up. But what could I have taken from that? What would be the story I could frame it now in my maturity? And how did it serve me? And what did I learn? And just kind of taking that situation, coming at it from like, 10, 12 different sides to give it a more well-rounded story, seeing it through that person, the bully's eyes, and going, what would cause someone like to do something so like this when I would never have considered that before that moment because that just wasn't part of my reality. So in recognizing that you have made up a lot of rules in your mind, we all have, no judgment, definitely no judgment. Uh, but we've made up these rules like with a 12-year-old mind, 14, 15, 16, 18-year-old mind, 20-year-old mind. And it doesn't have to stay fixed like that. Like we have to be malleable in our thinking and come at it from different ways and go, okay, maybe it was just something that I had to experience harshness on the first day of school, so I was better protected through all the other years at school. Maybe I had to learn, like, and to bring a lunch and instead of lunch money because this would have happened to me every other day. I don't know what the lessons are, but there
Mhm.
are other ones than the rule that you made up in your mind that you've decided to live with your whole life. So I think that's a really useful concept for a lot of people to go back on and go, yeah, 12-year-old trauma doesn't necessarily mean 40 something year old reasoning, and new stories can be told on this. It's just giving yourself permission to kind of feel uncomfortable while you look at it differently.
Yeah. And then what's really interesting too is how impactful certain situations are at a younger age and how we carry that into our adulthood. What I find really interesting is, we call ourselves adults. And, by definition, see, by definition, adult means like you're mature. It means you're professional. It means you handle your stuff. But in reality, I mean, you can look at this all around the globe, and I guarantee yourself included, that there were traumas and things that you went through where that maturity level stayed there
Hmm.
versus actually growing out of it. I mean, I know you've probably seen it. I know I've seen it. You've seen an adult throw a temper
Yes.
tantrum and you're like, oh, wow, you are acting like a 3-year-old. But what's
Hmm.
really interesting about that is if you really think about that and look into it, it's like, okay, so what could have possibly happened to them when they were around that age that caused them to have this much fear or anxiety or something where they felt not heard or whatever. And then what kind of continued in their life that allowed them to stay in that story and in that maturity moment. I'm not going to say
Yeah.
level because I feel like we have multiple different maturity levels. We tend to think of like, oh, I'm this age, so I'm, this mature, or I'm, older, so I'm wise. not so much. That's I'm just gonna throw that out there.
Yeah, but it's true though.
But
I
what's
agree with
really
you.
interesting is, and I'd love to know, based on like the clients that you've worked with and stuff, have you seen this as well? Is like some situations people may handle at, a very higher level, but then other situations that really aren't necessarily that significant, you can see like, oh wow, that's like we're like 10. Okay, we're like
Yeah.
12 in this moment.
Yeah. I see that in everyone, including myself, and like
I
just
wasn't
let's just call
excluding
it a
me.
no. I know. The great thing about personal development is that you realize that a lot of things inside you are in everybody else, and that's kind of what makes us all human. And if anybody's going, I'm not like that. Think about the last time you got cut off in traffic and somebody flipped you off or honked the
Oh,
horn.
yes.
How you react to that specific situation, I find is such a telltale as to, how you respond to stress, trauma, rejection, like all these kind of gnarly things in life. And it has nothing to do with you. It's just like that person is having a bad day and they need to get where they're going. And, they're going to lay the horn on at you and you're going to get to the next light and they're going to be right there with you because it didn't actually work. And that's my story, I guess, for it too. Geez. Okay. So I'll go lie on the couch right away and we'll get to that. But that is like, there are moments of clarity when we can look at those things and go, oh man, I'm glad I'm not that kind of person. I'm glad I've matured past that part. But then there's other times where you're just not into it. You've been triggered by other things that day. You've had, just not enough coffee, too much coffee, bad food, good food, whatever. And you react to it and suddenly you're like, I have my middle finger up at this person. That doesn't happen I've never done that before. But like I think we all get stuck. I think you're 100% accurate with that, is that we all get stuck in these different moments. And it's the trigger that will bring it out. And it will be the weirdest things for everyone. And it's just kind of being able to see it. So when we see those things with people and we're coaching them, it's really giving them, first of all, acceptance of how they feel. And then having we call it the layers of life, where you create your soul, and this is more in like the self realm, where you're like just defining kind of how you want to be emotionally, mentally, spiritually, physically. And when you kind of go like, how do you want to show up in the world emotionally? Like, do you want to be the person that is giving the horn? Do you want to be the person that just kind of is laissez-faire and kind of looks at it and it's like, I made a mistake, I forgive myself, and that's a you thing, you can just move on.
Hmm.
But it's kind of giving yourself that permission to be like, yeah, this doesn't, I don't want to be the person that, races up to cut that person back off because they cut me off. I'm going to value my peace more than I value vengeance, is really that thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you said something else too, because you said that's not a me thing, that's a them thing.
Mm,
Let me
it's always
repeat
a
that.
them
That
thing.
is not a me thing, that is a them thing. I think that that is another key piece to the reasons why we react to certain things. And that may stem from childhood, that may stem from a traumatic event. There's all kinds of things that come from it. I say don't necessarily focus so much on trying to figure out the root cause, because sometimes you may not know until like one day it just pings and you're like, oh, that was it. Okay.
Yeah.
I have quit trying to figure out the root reason, because that was something when I first started healing that I was like, okay, I've got to figure it all out. I've got to understand it. I've got to know what the root is. And then when I know what the root cause is, then I can let it go. And I realized that you're not always going to know, right? And we
No.
don't need to know that in order to let something go. So I love that you said it's not a me thing, it's a them thing, because we tend to take so many things so personally. We take it as an attack on ourselves for
Hmm.
whatever reason, whether it's because we are self-conscious, we are not feeling worthy about ourselves, however we intake that information, but we're making something that has absolutely nothing to do with us. We were just a circumstance that was in the way, and we make it all about us,
Yeah.
versus what I have learned to do, which is I'm in a good mood. I'm fine. That's a you thing. Like, that's not my fault. That's a you fault. You are dealing with whatever, you are going through whatever. I send blessings your way and I hope everything works out. And what's really interesting is, you said a few minutes ago about when you're on the road and when you get cut off, think about how you react and kind of use that as, almost like a baseline. And what's really interesting is I did a little bit of the reverse when I started working on how I reacted to things because I am Italian and German, okay? There's a lot of anger. There's a
Okay.
lot, and I'm only 5'2", so I already get made fun of for having more anger than everybody. But I've always been a fiery person. I've always been a hothead, and I don't back down. That's how I was for a really, really long time. Okay, I still don't back down, but it was how but I was very defensive. And so
Okay.
one of the things that I started doing when I wanted to work on this was I knew that things like that, little moments like that, pissed me off super quick.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
So what I started doing was I decided to challenge myself to see about this rewiring of the brain. That's when I was first kind of learning about this. And I was like, I think it's horse crap, but let's try it and see what happens. And so what I started doing was every time I got on the road and somebody cut me off, or I saw a car that maybe like wasn't in the best condition, instead of me judging or me getting irritated, I would feel for that person. So
Oh,
not
that's good.
necessarily just like, oh, you poor thing, but like, I am so sorry you were going through that. I really hope that things get better for you, right? Or if
Yeah.
I saw someone that I'm like, I'm really glad I'm not in that space anymore. I hope that you have a better day, right?
Yeah.
So I started doing that. And it was just shifting the way that I started reacting to those versus internally taking it as they were attacking me. It was directed toward me and it was all about me. Because we know, especially those that are parents, we do this to our kids. We attack our kids and we don't mean to, and it's because of all the other things throughout the day. So
Right.
if we want our children to forgive us and we have to try to forgive ourselves for the way we behave to our children in that moment, why can't we do the same when it's around other people? And so that's what I started to do to kind of reframe, just as like I said, just as an experiment of like, let's just kind of see what happens. But I did it for 30 days. And it doesn't bother me now. Like it really honestly doesn't. Like I was really able to let go of feeling like it was directed directly toward me. But what's really interesting is that then started to ripple out onto other things because then I noticed that other situations didn't frustrate me as quick. Or if my kid lost his cool a little bit because he was having a moment, I didn't take it as personal, which
Right.
then led to the ability to lean in with curiosity and ask questions to really decide, is this a me thing or is this a you thing?
I like that. Um, I'm going to give you a different level with that, just as a
Yes.
perspective shift. So
Please.
so here's a couple of things. So I think you and I get that we are the external world is our internal representations and thoughts and feelings, actions on the outside world. So when you're driving around and going and you're in this energy that you've been in for a long time before you had these 30 days, your energy may have been one of, just try to antagonize me and see what happens. Kind of like almost like a defiance, kind of like, and we have these energies that we put off all the time. Like we can put off like a victim mentality, we can put off an aggressor mentality, we can put off a pacifist. Like there's nothing wrong with any of it, but that energy you bring when you're driving in this case seems to have things come to you. So when you consciously are saying, okay, I'm gonna shift here. I'm gonna see if it works, and it does. It works different speeds for everyone, and it's fantastic. So, but when you're looking at that stuff, the challenge I've started to do for myself is when something weird happens and I'm reacting to it, I go, I wonder why this is happening for me right now, not to me. I have to give up on to me because something in my energy, something in my world is having it because it doesn't matter if the person let me go or honked or didn't do anything. My reaction to it is the internal, I don't want to say struggle, but like that internal representation of the world that I'm having. And so when you can go like, wow, my kid came home from school and was really upset. Now I'm really upset. And it's like, well, what inside you is making you feel upset? Because you weren't with the kid. Maybe you took on the emotions, but there's still something there's like a nerve inside you that gets activated with that.
Hmm.
So it's really being able to look at it and go, what part of me is bringing this to me? Like, why is this happening for me to learn something from it? And for you, I mean, you found you clearly found the lesson in this case, and you learned it, and you changed it. There's, a lot of people are like, yeah, I'm just going to drive angry. I'm good getting angry. That's totally okay too. But when people are going through these things, being able to look at it and go, okay, what is the lesson? I'll give you an example. I went to a class, and I very rarely get cut off. I left this. I was learning when I was learning my energy healing. I was left feeling really, really good. And I'm driving out, and one person cut me off, and I thought that's so interesting. And I'm like, okay, and I just kind of shrugged it off. Two more people cut me off in the next 10 minutes, and it's like it's a Sunday afternoon. It's not like a bad work day or something like this. It's like Sunday supper time, and I'm like, and I do a lot of reflection and stuff. I'm like, clearly something was happening to test me to make sure like this calm was it. And by the third one, I'm like, what the hell? And then I just kind of let it go. And I'm like, yeah, I don't that feeling didn't feel good. So I'm just gonna acknowledge that I feel it, let it go and move on. But it was really, really interesting that sometimes we're getting tested to see if our resolve is there. And I'm sure when you did your 30 days, you probably got cut off a little more than you expected. And maybe even towards the end when you're like, I think I'm doing good with this. And then it's like you get cut off a little bit more and you're like, "No, I'm still doing good, or, maybe I slipped for a second, but came right back to this new status that I wanted to be at. It's just really interesting when you shift the life happening to me to life happening for me, how things in your environment really do change. And it's
Hmm.
kind of I'm going to get the expression wrong, but it's like when the way you see things change the way I can't get it. But basically when you change how you look at things, things look at you change. It's like it's a
There you
perceptual
go.
thing. But
There's
there you
30.
go.
I
Do
get it.
not
I
come to me
got
for
it. I
accurate
knew.
quotes.
That's okay. I can't remember half of the ones anyway. But I love this too. I love this though because it, moving into a little bit of a conversation I'd like to have anyway is you are shifting your energy, which means you are changing your energy, which in my personal opinion also can lead into energy healing because we
Yes.
are so affected by so many things on so many levels on a day to day to day basis. And,
Yeah.
some people may take in other people's energies and emotions and things a lot more than other people. And I feel like we as a society don't realize that we need to cleanse from that. We need to have a fresh start, right? So you hear people talk about like grounding or breath work or energy healing and all of these different things and what they are supposed to do for you. Now, I personally have seen it help me tremendously. You also have to be open to it, to realizing that
That's
like
it.
you just need to let shit go. Saying.
There there you go.
You just need to let shit go. But in your eyes and what you do, because you do energy healing and theta healing, which I think is just the coolest thing. By the way, you guys, I got to do a session and it was flipping phenomenal. So if you're ever thinking of doing something, you should definitely hit Andrew up. But it's my little plug.
5yearyou.com.
But where do you feel like that can help people if, let's say, someone is interested in, like, I know I have all these agitations, or I know I have all these things built up, or I'm in a really stressful environment. I can't necessarily get myself out of it at the moment, but I feel like I need to be able to let things go. Where can you give them direction? Where do you feel like energy healing and stuff like that fits into those scenarios? Because I feel like sometimes people just want to like jump into it and be like, this is going to solve all of it. So I'm just going to come right to you. But we also understand that there's a level to that as well. So can you elaborate?
Yeah, I think so. I'm going to preface this because I know there's people out there going like, "Oh, they're talking about energy stuff and this, I don't get this." If you're listening to this, I was an accountant before this, and my world was very, very much 3D, very much, like spreadsheets, computers. If you told me energy existed, I'm like, okay, like in an electrical socket, that part I get. But the more I've learned about physics and like quantum and all these other things, it's like it really is everything. We are made up of energy, and once you open up to just that possibility, you start to see that, how you think changes how you feel. And your mind is this supercomputer that is processing stuff. And some of it might be stuck, like we talked about, with a 5-year-old mind, 12-year-old mind, 18-year-old, 20-year-old mind, because it got stuck. Totally okay. So when you're noticing that, I always get angry you know, uh, when my boss uses a particular word. What I do with energy healing is we get to the root cause, and we go into the forest, and we find that root of whatever it is that's not serving you anymore, and we're going to pull that out, and we're going to put something nice in there for you. So um when we're doing that stuff, and if you're at a point where you're like, I just need to get work, you can search for an energy healer in your area or online. I work online exclusively. I have a friend's clinic that I go to once in a while in Atlanta, but that's about it. But the nice thing is now, like, it's energy, and you can work remotely on it. And you and I, like, you're in Nashville, right? And I'm in, Winnipeg, Canada, and you have these moments, and it's like, I'm still like, after every session, I'm like, this is just the coolest world that we're in. And I wouldn't have seen it had I stayed on a spreadsheet. So first of all, just being open to stuff is the biggest part of it. And if that's too much of a leap for you, just try following your breath for a few minutes and notice that you're going to have a ton of crazy thoughts come in, and just let those thoughts kind of go, and they're going to keep coming in. You're just going to go, thank you. Thank you. Yeah, that guy cut me off. Yes, we know the guy cut you off. We've been on that a little bit too much today. So go. And you just keep going with it. And then you check in before and after. And I think that's the thing that I missed when I was first starting this stuff. Because I just started by meditating every morning for like 40 minutes, which is the most frustrating 40 minutes of my day. But eventually I learned to check in before and check in after. And there was just this huge change in my body, my energy, but in my body, I could feel like I was more relaxed. I was able to let those things that came up just kind of go. And then as time went on, I went through a bunch of different healing modalities and stuff that they all have their place. There's not one that works better than the other. There's one that works better probably for you. And the joy is getting to discover those things and to find out which one works best. But I think when you're just getting into this stuff, like, there's the massage. Massage is an easy one. You can literally like just massage yourself. Give yourself a nice lymphatic kind of touch massage to get things moving. You can do breath work, you can do meditation, you can find an energy healer, and notice how you feel before and after, because I think that is truly the difference maker in your mind for going, wow, this actually works. Because I think a lot of times our brain wants to cherry pick stuff. So you do the breathing, you feel really good afterwards. Then you get cut off again in traffic because that guy didn't go anywhere. And you're like, oh, I'm still mad about that, and it's like, that wasn't the lesson. It was just that you could return to a lower baseline, a calmer baseline. And so you have to allow yourself this journey. And I think, yeah, I know when I started, I'm like, what is the thing that is going to fix me? And I'm using some giant air quotes with that for those of
Oh,
you
yeah.
listening. And I was never broken. And that was the thing I had to, even as I say that, I'm like tearing up as I say that right now. I've never been broken. I was always just perfect. And I forgot that. And it's just an unlearning that I've been doing for a very long time. And energy work can help with that.
That is such beautifully put. And I love that, you say it's not that one modality is better than the other. It's just whatever works for you. I've had the blessing and opportunity to try a lot of different things.
Okay.
And there are some that I've done and I'm like, that wasn't bad, but it's okay. And then there are others that I'm like, oh my gosh, like that made a difference, or that brought me so much peace, or that made me sleep better than I ever had before. And it's being aware of those certain things. And I think that we forget that we can start small and then kind of build upon that and see what kind of feels called to us versus us
Yeah.
like Googling what are all the different modalities of ways that can help heal me. And then like just trying a bunch of them, right? That's just like throwing the 52 card deck and hoping that you pick the right one that you
Yeah.
needed out of all those different things. And that was one thing that I didn't necessarily do in the beginning, but then I started learning that I needed to wait. And that was, okay, I want to learn all these things. All these things sound awesome. All these things could probably fix me at the time. And then it was realizing I don't necessarily think that that is exactly right. There was something that was intriguing, but now that I'm thinking about it a little bit more,
Yeah.
and and it's realizing that your journey is unique and specific to you. And while, yes, it's going to overlap and you're going to have people that have similar journeys or some that are really creepily close to the same, but it doesn't necessarily mean that everything that they've done or they've gone through is the exact same way that you're going to heal from it as well.
No.
So it's a really interesting journey. I think that we forget that because we're so used to a book that tells us how we're supposed to do things or a protocol that we are supposed to follow. And we think that we're supposed to be like everyone else. And that's the whole beauty of being human, is that we all can experience different things or even the same things, but still have different takeaways, different lessons, and different ways of healing from it.
Yeah.
And I think that that's some of the coolest things that we forget, because those are the conversations I enjoy the most. I don't want to talk about the same thing and us have the exact same opinion and the exact same thought. Like, it's boring. Oh, yeah, of course. I already know that. You're in my head. But if we can have a conversation where there are some similarities and you can give me a different perspective or a different take or a different outlook on something, I feel like I'm learning. And that's what I think we need to remember, is that we are constantly, should be in a constant state of wanting to learn, of wanting to understand. And that's what opens the mind up for you to let go of a lot more things and also
Yeah.
see the doors in front of you that can lead you to that next step of personal growth and healing that you're looking for.
I agree completely. And not to, I know you want to have a difference of opinion and stuff, but um, what I would say is like our podcast, 5 Year You, talks about personal growth and these little things that you can do and stuff like that. And they all come out of our own personal experiences. So I think my whole journey started from getting a concussion playing hockey, and it I couldn't have imagined how it was going to go. And I've since looked back on my journey and like, oh, that had to happen for me to get to here. But I went to a chiropractor and that didn't work. And then it was my jaw was like I had TMJ, which is like literally your body like trying to have control. So I went to craniosacral and then I go into acupuncture, and that's when I kind of realized I had these unresolved traumas in my past. So I went to EMDR, and EMDR was amazing, but it's like really, really hard on you. And then that somebody suggested Reiki, and then somebody suggested theta healing, and like it, all these things just kind of show up. And but it comes from taking that first step. And I think we are so conditioned, and this is like just a drum I love to just bang on until it breaks. But we're so conditioned in life from school and earlier on to always get it right the first time. Like I gotta get 100% on my test. I was never like that, but I felt the pressure to try to be like that and to try to just be the best, to be 100%. And that's just one of those things that kind of holds us back when we're growing, is that, well, I can't, what happens if I do an energy healing session and it doesn't work? What happens if it does work and you just never notice it because you actually just stopped feeling that bad that you got so used to feeling, and now it's gone and you just don't notice it because it's just like that little itch, that you notice is there. But once it's the times that it's not there, you don't really notice that it's not there. Maybe it's just about taking that one step at a time towards your ideal version of yourself. And it's not about being perfect. You're already perfect, but it's about creating your life with intent and allowing yourself to progress down this path that is showing up. You're not, look, and I think I'm going to steal this from The Secret, but you can literally drive from New York to LA all through the evening, only ever seeing the next 30 feet in front of you. But you can do it without you'll get there, but you're not going to see the whole road. You're not meant to. It's boring. If you got to the end of your life right now and look back and said, oh, look, they threw a surprise party for me here. And look at this. I won this thing here and here and here. And you have to go back and live it. You're like, surprise. Yay. I knew that was happening. Here's your lottery ticket. Yeah, great. I know I win. It's just, It's great. And I know I know what I do with the money too. So I'll just, that's not what life's about. Life's about discovery and growth and expansion. So that's kind of what I see when I think of like all these energy healings and these different growth techniques and stuff like that. It's just you're building a better version of you, not a more perfect version. You're just better, so you feel better, and that is way more important than getting it right out of the gate. And you might, I don't think you ever, you either grow or you learn, and you can't really get it wrong. The only
Hmm.
time you get it wrong in my mind is when you keep repeating the same mistake over and over and over and over again for years and going, why isn't my life changing? It's no, you know, like
Yeah, I lived that one for a little while.
yeah, likewise.
Oh my goodness, Andrew, I could talk to you all day. You were like one of my favorite people to conversate with, and you've given so much information, and I think
Thank you.
clarity and also openness for people to make decisions for what lies with them. As we come to a close, one question I always ask everybody is, do you happen to have a quote or a piece of advice you would like to leave the audience with?
So the one thing I've said in this interview is, I'm terrible with quotes, and this is where we're going to go with this.
I
So
know.
embrace imperfection, folks. No, the quote that I always like is, it's in the other room, and I my son literally like etched this as a Father's Day gift on a piece of wood for me, and it's in the other room. But it's, don't be who everyone else wants you to be so they like you. Be you so that the right people love you.
Mm.
And I think that's kind of how I live my life now. So it's nice to be after the comma in that sentence.
Oh, I love that. That's so beautiful. Well, do us all a favor then, Andrew. Tell everybody, how can they follow you? How can they connect with you? How can they be in your world?
Well, we have a coaching program on 5yearyou.com. That's an intensive 5-week thing to help people discover their true purpose and create a life of meaning. So if you're feeling called to do that, that's one way. We're on all the socials at 5yearyou. And I love a good conversation with everyone. So just feel free to reach out. I love meeting people. I love learning. And we offer, as a thank you for being on your show, Kat, we're offering 3 complimentary coaching calls to the first 3 people that reach out to us at hello@5yearyou.com, or they can go to the website and reach out to us that way too. So
Oh, I love that so much. Thank you, Andrew. We'll be sure to
thank
have
you.
all that information in the show notes as well. I hope that this gives you an insight into a direction you could potentially take your life. Obviously, it's always a choice, and I think that we forget that we always have a choice, whether it is the path of dark or choosing to do something a little bit different that's going to bring you to light. You always have a choice, and I think that we forget that. So thank you again, Andrew, so much for being a part of the podcast today and sharing all of your amazing gifts.
Thanks so much for having me on, Kat. It's been great.
You are so welcome. And to everybody else out there, be sure to follow Andrew if you're definitely looking for something different and you've tried some things, or you're really feeling called. I definitely suggest reaching out. Andrew's theta healing session is by all means more than phenomenal. So I
Thank
can't
you.
thank him enough for being a part of the show. Make sure you follow him online as well. And until next time, do one thing positive for someone each and every day and see the difference that it makes in your life. So until next time, have a fantastic day. Thank you so much for tuning in to Real Chat with Kat today, where real stories meet real solutions. If you loved today's episode, don't forget to subscribe, leave us a review on Apple, and share this with someone who may also need to hear this as well. Let's also keep the conversation going. Follow me on socials at The Lotus Effect, connect with our incredible guests, and remember, you are never alone. Your story matters, and you have the ability and the power to rewrite it. You always have a choice. Until next time, stay strong, stay inspired, and keep showing up as the incredible, unstoppable